Number 1 on the agenda, I'll begin the meeting with a moment of silent meditation or prayer and the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 2 on the agenda is public comment on any agenda items. Does anyone have anything on the agenda that they'd like to come up? If not, you'll still have an opportunity to come up when we have each item come up. Seeing no one come forward. Number 3 on the agenda, approval of council minutes for the meeting, July 9th, 2018. Do we have any additions or corrections?
I had a few corrections and additions. Let's see, item number 8. I wanted the minutes to reflect that the preliminary land development plan was submitted to the township on July 6th. I said they believe the previous Friday. It's not in here now, but it was something that they mentioned, and I thought it was noteworthy that we should memorialize it in here.
Preliminary plan was submitted to the township in July, what was that?
6.
Sixth.
Since it's going to be in the minutes, Mr. Leckie, please confirm the actual date with the Building Planning Department.
Yes. And then number 14, I did note that the township is now posting the minutes of the council meeting on the website once they're approved. I also mentioned, and I wanted this added, that video of council meetings is available on the township's YouTube page, and that the mayor had promised to look into live streaming all council meetings. That was all I had.
Do we have any other additions?
I have one, just for clarification under other business. When I brought up the coves, Mr. Pizzo, I believe, if I recollect, you were going to look into that issue, rather than just specifically saying there should be no striping.
Yes, and I did request that the Township Building and Planning Department research the records for that particular development. They are going back to determine back all the way to the time that the project was constructed, and any subsequent action taken by the township to see if the main streets were ever dedicated. It's our belief that the what would you call them? Not the main streets, the parking areas themselves are not township, but we're still working to ascertain whether the main streets ever were. So as far as the striping of the parking areas would go, that would fall to the responsibility of the development, of the homeowners of the development, but it would still have to be pursuant to either the original approved plan, or if they look to modify that in some way, then modification to that plan.
Okay.
So the parking for whether the parking areas are dedicated to the township or not, they're still part of the approved plan for the development. So within the township records is the parking plan for that project. If they're going to do restriping, the restriping, assuming that the current striping is consistent with the approved plan, all they would have to do is paint the lines in the same places. If they're looking to modify that in some fashion, then that may require additional approval by the township, because the parking requirements, even if it's not township-owned, that still has to comply with the township ordinances as it pertains to the parking regulations for the township.
Okay, that's fine. I guess just the concern with the minutes, I mean, can we have that clarified then? It was just noted that it was going to be looked into.
Sure.
And they don't just, okay, we can discuss during other business, I guess. I mean, they don't have a homeowners association, correct?
That I do not know.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You address it to the president. He's the one that's going to do it.
Do we have any other additions or corrections? If not, then a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 4-0. Mr. Knowles is on vacation, so he will not be here this evening. Mr. Pizzo, are there any changes to tonight's agenda as far as anything coming off?
Yes, one item, Mr. Polari, that I'm aware of, and that would be item number 10 and 11, even though that's two items, it's two items involving one property at 3750 State Road. The administration is asking that that matter, be tabled from this evening's meeting to council's first meeting in August to afford the administration an opportunity to meet with the developer to work through some issues that were raised in the most recent traffic engineers review, as well as some issues that were raised by an adjacent property owner involving stormwater management.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzo. Do we have a motion to,
Was there a specific date that they wanted?
Yeah,
Whatever the first meeting in August is for council.
okay. I'll make the motion. We table the item, move it to our first date set forth, which would be August 13th,
and that would be items 10 and 11.
for items number 10 and 11, yes.
Thank you. Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 4-0.
And then, Mr. Polari, the minutes should reflect that the council met in executive session immediately prior to this evening's meeting for approximately 30 minutes. Present for the executive session were the mayor, the 4 members of the council present this evening, the director of public safety for a portion of the meeting, and me. There were 4 items discussed. The first was a matter of personnel involving the public safety department. The second was a public safety issue that the director shared with the mayor and council involving an investigation that his department is engaged in. The third was a matter of pending litigation involving the township and a property owner within the township. And the fourth was a matter of potential litigation between the township and 2 adjacent property owners. No official action was taken by the council during the executive session in regard to any of those items, and no official action will be required at this evening's meeting on any of those matters. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Number 4 on the agenda is mayor's recommendation of the board member to the senior advisory board upon council's consideration. The potential candidate is Mr. Joseph Saws Evner. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. President, I put his name forward, and I think you have his resume. All of you should have. I don't know if Bud is here. Is Bud's not here tonight, Frank? Okay. Bud's not here this evening, but if you see his resume, I think he'd be an asset to that board, the Senior Advisory Board. Look for confirmation.
I know Buzz from going over to the senior center, and he is quite helpful doing a lot of things. He's a little younger than a senior, but he's certainly an asset to the senior citizen and would be so on the advisory board. So I would put that in the form of a motion, Mr. President, if you're looking for that at this time.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I have a question before we get to that point, unless you wanted me to hold off.
We'll go to a second, and I'll ask for questions on the motion.
Sure thing.
I'll second the motion. Any questions on the motion?
Did somebody resign from the board?
Yes. Yes, we have their resignation, yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I
It's
wanted to
not
make
an
sure.
addition. This is just filling in a.
okay, that's fine then. No, I just want to appreciate getting the resume, the letter of interest. I think this is exactly the kind of information that we've been looking for these boards, so thank you, Mayor, for forwarding this to us.
Mayor, too, as well, I think it would be appropriate to bring up at this point. Also, I want to say thanks for providing this information. I know we previously met earlier in the year about putting forth some requirements for the boards. Was that something that you had considered and, something that we could?
I'm always considering anything council brings before
Great.
me.
Yep. So then I would like to then provide that to council members this evening for consideration, have them, give them some ample time to review what I'm suggesting as far as some of the requirements, and then we can discuss and put forth possibly a change to the ordinance.
Okay, well, that has nothing to do with what we're doing here. So if you want to bring that other business.
I can do that, that's
We can
fine.
definitely do that.
That's fine, okay.
We have any other questions on the appointment? Okay, then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 4-0. Number 5 on the agenda, consideration of public hearing on the ordinance amending the township code of ordinances, amending to modify the definition of contractor. Mr. Paisley, will you begin on that?
Yes, Mr. Polari, thank you. As to the ordinance before council this evening, sections A, B, and D deal specifically with contractors engaged in tree trimming or removing, as that is defined within the proposed ordinance. And tree trimmers or removers would be individuals engaged in the business of removing or dealing with trees that are greater than 3 feet in height, or that require the use of heavy equipment in order to crown, thin, clean, or fully remove the trees from the property. So sections A, B, and D go into adding tree trimming or removing as a specifically defined contractor activity or enterprise within the ordinance, defines what a tree trimmer or remover is and the nature of the work that they perform, and ultimately also provides, section D would provide for the revocation of a contractor's license if a tree trimmer removes a shade tree in violation of the township's shade tree ordinance. Section C would apply to not only to the newly defined tree trimmers and removers, but also to all other contractors who operate under the township ordinance via a contractor's license. And what section C does is to increase the insurance requirements that all contractors doing business within the township are required to have, from an amount of $25,000 to $1 million worth of coverage for public liability, property damage, products liability, and for completed operations. It also requires them to provide the township with evidence of workers' compensation liability coverage at statutory limits for the professions that are involved. The purpose behind the ordinance, the changes to the ordinance as it pertains to the insurance requirements, are for the protection of our homeowners within the township. In most cases, contractors are coming onto their property, doing work on private property, and if they are not licensed at all, we're putting the homeowners' properties fully at risk for injury to the workers to the homeowners to invitees on the property. And as to the contractors that do have township licenses, at this point in time, when the ordinance was first written, $25,000 may have been a sufficient amount of coverage, but in this day and age, I doubt there are too many people who have homeowners policies that don't carry anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million worth of single event coverage. And the township is looking for the same from contractors doing business within the township. As to the additions of the provisions for tree trimmers and removers, what the township has found, particularly in the wake of the winter storms that we had, which brought down a great number of trees throughout the township and had tree contractors extremely busy, was that there were a number of individuals out there doing the work without contractor licenses, thereby undermining the businesses that are located in the township or who have licenses with the township to do the work and who are complying with all of these, the requirements of the township contractors ordinance. And secondarily, again, putting the homeowners at risk because these individuals are coming onto property without the proper insurances in place for themselves or their workers, thereby putting the homeowners at unforeseen risk. So with all of that as motivation, we've created these revisions to the ordinance. The ordinance has been properly advertised and is in a form acceptable for your consideration and hopefully approval this evening.
Do we have any questions from the board?
Yeah, does this include landscapers? Landscaping businesses?
Landscapers? I don't think so. Sorry. Yes, landscapers were already within the context of the township's contractor ordinance. As I understand it, were already a part of the
They were already, so
ordinance.
this isn't
Yes.
inadvertently adding them, they were already included.
Right.
Yes, is that correct?
That answers it.
I have a question also, Mr. President. Joe, the question is, this license, is this renewable every year? Once a year, they have to renew it? And with that, do they have to have proof of insurance every year submitted to the township?
Yes, it's an annual requirement for the contractor license. So each year they have to reapply for the contractor license. Each year they have to provide the township with proof of insurance.
Thank you, that's it.
And to clarify, Ms. Gallagher did remind me that landscape contractors who are doing work such as constructing paving, walls, things like that on private property, yes. Somebody who's coming on to cut the grass, no. Those individuals are not currently a part of the ordinance.
What if those types of landscaping services that people hire to cut their grass, trim their bushes, if they have a bush or a tree that's over 3 feet tall, now they'd be in violation?
They would be.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Are they aware of that? Aside from the usual notices that we put out through the newspaper, are they aware that their business has to be either limited or they've got to now go to the township for a license?
Let me take a step back. Someone who's trimming a shrub or a hedge is not covered by this ordinance. Someone who is performing specific acts, which if you go to page 3 of the ordinance, crowning, thinning, or cleaning, crown raising or elevating, crown reduction or shaping, tree removal, doing those particular acts on a tree that is a minimum of 3 feet, that would fall within the
Right.
four corners of the ordinance.
So my point is 3 feet is not very tall. It's probably no taller than the dais here. So there's no special equipment that would be needed for a landscaper to come and trim a tree in my front yard. And they wouldn't expect that they're gonna have to then go to the township for a license that they've never had before to prove that they have $1 million worth of insurance that maybe they've never had before. But was any consultation done to local businesses, not just the tree trimmers that I understand, this is to help protect them, but what about the multitude of local landscaping businesses?
The tree trimming, represented the tree trimming industry were the individuals that we were in consult with in preparation of the ordinance. The fellows who pull up to cut your grass, no, because we don't believe that this would cover them.
But it does. You just said that it does. If the tree is greater than 3 feet in height, and they're gonna do anything that involves,
But that
crown
is,
thinning or cleaning.
you're correct. And if that sort of a landscaper is involved in that sort of work, then they would have to come in and have a contractor's license. If they're simply going out and cutting.
I get that they would need it.
Simply going out and cutting grass, cutting the grass, loading up and leaving, and that's the service they're providing each week, then that individual doesn't necessarily have to have a contractor's license.
But prior to this meeting, there was no indication that they would need to get a license. And I'm not talking about getting up on a ladder and trimming a big, 20-foot tall tree in somebody's backyard. I'm talking about shrubbery. And I don't mean to, poke at the minutia here, but we're asking a lot for perhaps a small business to take on that they may not even realize they have to take on. Because they wouldn't think of themselves as tree trimming business. But the way that this is written, that concerns me.
I hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily, I don't know what it is then that you're suggesting we do.
What about changing the height of the tree?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what I'm
if
wondering.
you're looking at a 3-foot tree, it's not a tree that's going to cause damage to another property. What if we were to make it a more reasonable sized tree? I mean, I didn't get to talk with any of the contractors that weren't discussed, but why would a 3-foot tree, like, if I were to go out and trim my arborvitaes, or if I have my guys cutting the grass, we need to trim back the arborvitaes because we're in the way, but they're 4 foot high, he would need to come in and get a license. So would it be better to change the height to a more reasonable height, like 6 foot?
Well,
6 foot, 8 foot, yeah.
and we can certainly do that. Again, whatever council is most comfortable with, we'll make the ordinance say. This isn't, you have to get a license every time you're performing a service.
This is an annual
This is an
license.
annual license to be engaged in a particular kind of business.
Understood.
This would not be for the grass cutter or the weed whacker or the shrub trimmer, but this would be not,
But it would, the way it's written.
no, because it speaks to trees, it doesn't speak to shrubs. But again, we can certainly change the height. There's nothing magic about 3 feet. We can make it
Okay.
as high as you collectively want it to be, or we can eliminate it altogether. Or we can make people who cut grass come in and get licenses as well. However council believes it should be done. At the end of the day, the objective here is to say if you're going to be doing work on private property that has some inherent risk to it, you're going to be properly licensed and insured.
Understood, and I agree in principle with that. Like I said, I'm bothered by the lack of consultation with local landscaping businesses when the way that this is written, the work is clearly within their scope of business.
I think the reason, I'm going to give my opinion.
Well, again, I would
I'm not-
say that there wasn't a lack of consultation with local landscapers. It's our belief that this does not affect the local landscaper, at least the one who is cutting grass and trimming trees. If they are out there and part of their services include installing H.P. Henry block patios on people's backyards, then yes, they may be grass cutting and doing that, then you're getting a license.
Right.
So if it's Joe's grass cutting and that's all it is, we didn't believe, and I still don't believe, that particular service is encompassed by this ordinance.
I
But if it's
understand.
all of the everything yard service, and it's everything from cutting grass to putting in a beautiful landscaped backyard with boulders and a gazebo and block paving, then yes, they fall into here, whether or not a 3-foot tree is involved.
They would take different orders.
Yeah, why don't we go with, that's what I'm, any inputs, I think 6 foot seems reasonable.
Yeah, I would even say 10 foot. The reason for this ordinance is to address the trimming of the trees with big equipment, and the people don't have the proper equipment, they're climbing up the trees, 20 foot, whatever.
Right.
10 foot, you can have a 6 foot individual, reach up, prune it, bing, bang, boom, that's it. I mean, so if it's 6 foot, it's 6 foot, if it's 10 foot, it's 10 foot. But this is to address the real trees, the ones that need the equipment to take them down. That's what the purpose of this ordinance is, so whatever.
And that seems to make sense.
So whatever we decide on, I think 10 foot makes sense because it changes the
Should we meet in the
the
middle and
structure
go
of
with
what you're
8
doing.
feet?
What's that?
I said, should we meet in the
I'd say
middle and go with
just
8
go with
feet?
the 10.
I'm okay with 10
And
feet.
you need to use a ladder, so you're climbing a ladder, you're up on the ladder, you
Yeah.
fall off the ladder, you cut a limb and it goes into the other person's yard or hits somebody below. I mean, we're trying to make this safer, so.
Absolutely.
And I think 10 foot, you're getting now up into 1.
All right, why don't we go down to 8 feet then?
8
I
foot.
think that
That's
seems
fine.
reasonable.
Yeah, that's fine. And I thought 3 foot was kind of funny too.
That's what struck me with.
Yeah, and Mr. Pizzo, I mean, I agree with the argument. I mean, I see it a lot happen in my neighborhood, just because they're younger trees, they'll grab the guys that are out there mowing the lawn and to kind of keep those trees within good shape. I'll make the motion that we approve it with the revision of the Section B.
I want to go to the audience. It's good to go to the audience first.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against this ordinance? Seeing no one come forward, okay, a motion would be in order.
I'll make the motion that we make the change in the ordinance with the revision of Section B, tree trimmer or remover means an individual engaged in the business or practice of any of the following where the tree is more than 8 feet in height.
I'll second the motion.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 4-0. Number 6 on the agenda, consideration of a resolution regarding non-exclusive video sharing agreements made by the body between the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania acting through the Department of Transportation and Bensalem Township. Mr. Pizzo, are you handling this one?
Certainly. If any of you watch the morning traffic reports on the local newscasts, you'll often see that they have some video feed from PennDOT cameras that are mounted on various state highways throughout the area. PennDOT, since it's been in the practice of installing these cameras on the local roads, have been willing to share those video feeds with entities such as the local news and certainly with local government. And the PennDOT, in order to provide that service, requires that whoever it is that's sharing the video feed, in this case it would be the township, enter into a non-exclusive video sharing license agreement. The township, to some extent, already utilizes some of the video feeds from PennDOT in the public safety department, but apparently this has been going on without the benefit of a licensing agreement being in place. PennDOT has come to the township and asked that the township at this time enter into such an agreement, and that is the agreement that is before you this evening, together with a resolution indicating that the township has approved the agreement and that the Director of Administration is authorized to execute it on behalf of the township, as well as any other documents that may be required as part of the agreement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any questions on the resolution?
resolution refers to multiple exhibits, A, B, C, and D, E, that are not attached. What's the status of those exhibits? Or the agreement does, I guess, not the resolution itself.
Those, I don't believe, were included in your package just for the sake of saving the life of a few trees. These are the standard PennDOT provisions.
They're in 3-foot trees.
That are included in every contract that we execute with the Commonwealth. The contractor integrity provisions, the Americans with Disabilities Act, that the township will comply with the integrity provisions, that the township will comply with the ADA, that the township will not discriminate or engage in sexual harassment. Those are, as I said, standard provisions that the PennDOT requires of us for just about every contract we enter into. And for that reason, they weren't included, again, just because, A, the township has no choice. They're a part of the agreement, and B, to save a tree or two. We can certainly have them scanned and emailed to you, Mr.
No,
Sloan.
I just wanted to make sure that's all it was, that it was a
Sure.
standard thing. The other question/concern I have, the agreement's very one-sided, and just that PennDOT
Yes, it
can kind
is.
of shut off our access at any time.
Yes.
If our police are using this for investigation, is there any kind of situation where that would come up, or is there some kind of other agreement that keeps those resources connected? Just in terms of public safety, that's all I'm thinking about.
No, this is pretty much the standard PennDOT form, and what this agreement will expand at the same time, memorialize the current arrangement, but will also expand the township's ability to use it to departments outside of public safety if building and planning should have a need or occasion to use it, or if in the operation of the township's television channel, if there were some reason to do that, we would be able to utilize that as well. But in answer to your question, to my knowledge, there's been no instance where we've run into an issue pretty much to date with the public safety department, and pretty much it's just PennDOT saying, look, you're allowed to use it for these purposes, just use it for these purposes, and everything will be fine.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, we don't care, we don't have to, we're PennDOT.
Understood.
Right.
Do we have any other
Is
questions?
there any restriction to the access at the township level? Who would have access to it?
As a matter of internal policy, I don't know if there is a restriction on who has access to it, or if there's a need to have that restriction. But whatever the public safety department has in place, I'm sure will continue. To the extent that other departments will have it, we'll set up internal policy as to who can use it and how.
Great, thank you. And then just one other quick question, Mr. Pizzo. There was some language about the right to know law. Do you see any impact or issue with that at the township level, or is that just going to be strictly held at the state level?
I believe that'll be strictly at the state level, but the right to know law applies to us equally as it does to the state. In fact, it applies to us more than it does to the state. So the township, there's no reason this agreement would not be a public document, and if a copy were requested under the right to know law, it would be provided in comport with that statute and the township's policies regarding the same.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against this resolution? Seeing no one come forward, a motion would be in order.
Make a motion, we approve as presented, resolution regarding a non-exclusive video sharing agreement between the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania acting through the Department of Transportation and Bensalem Township.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it 4-0. Number 7 on the agenda, consideration of a resolution regarding Bensalem Greenway end segments. You want to handle that, or?
Who's gonna have- Tony, why don't you come up? Hey, Tony Belfield, he's been working with me with this 25 years, so I guess
Yeah, right.
you're the guy that's ought to be talking
It's a
about it.
silver anniversary, Mayor, silver anniversary. What's before you tonight, gentlemen, are actually two resolutions that have been broken into two applications. The first one is for the Bensalem Greenway end segments. Fairly descriptive. You know, the 50,000-foot view is this is the East Coast Greenway, the trail that is going to be constructed from Maine through the Florida Keys. It's the equivalent of the Appalachian Trail, but for bicycles. So what we're entertaining here is a 12-foot wide macadam trail. It does run through Bensalem. It follows the alignment of State Road. So what we're looking at, the application tonight would be for 5 of the total of 17 segments that would eventually be built. The 2 segments at the beginning at Neshaminy Creek, which would encompass portions of Neshaminy State Park. The other 3 segments would be the connector to Philadelphia. Logic says, you know, we build these connectors first because these are the endpoints of the trail as far as Bensalem's concerned, and then fill in from there, kind of meeting in the middle, and we'll get to some of that in the next segment that's being entertained. So for this first one, we're looking for a grant application of $2.8 million in round numbers. That would facilitate the construction of 10,000 linear feet of the 12-foot wide bike trail with all the necessary improvements, including ADA, crossings, signage, stormwater management, landscaping, the whole 9 yards. That'll be about 30% of the total trail program. The construction schedule would be, we would hopefully have an award of the grant in December of this year. Then we'd be able to do some of the final engineering for the bid packages, let it out to bid, start the permitting process with the goal of having construction completed by the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021. Fairly aggressive schedule. This trail segment would link, again, we're looking to link Bristol Township and Philadelphia in the trail. It's getting a lot of attention right now. We had the Secretary of DCNR come down just a few weeks ago to tour some of these areas, especially the state park, of course. Highly receptive of the application, and we're highly encouraged by the grant, those who would be awarding the grant to make this application. So we're kind of excited about that portion of it. So that is the first resolution that I request you entertain tonight.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Butler?
So first of all, Mr. Belfield, thank you very much for your work on the environmental board and your work on this project.
Thank you.
You had noted you're expecting the award in December. What are your plans if you do not get the award by this year?
Well, the way it works is kind of a little bit of a transition with this particular grant application, the multimodal grant applications. If they award by December, there is no match. So we get the money, we move on. Obviously, that is the goal and objective, and we've been clear in our application that that's what we're proposing. Worst case scenario, there would be a 30% match. In that case, we pursue other grants for matching, and we've already discussed that with some of the other agencies to come up with that match. The goal, again, this trail segment, as currently constructed, would come at no cost to the township for its construction. So it's close to $3 million worth of improvements. And again, this is designed through the multimodal program. This is all designed to get people off the roads, to get them traveling with bicycles and pedestrians and things of that nature, safe transit through some of these intersections. You know, there are no sidewalks in that area, so this would operate as a sidewalk. And with the economic development we have proposed down there, we feel we should have this in place first for the safety of the community, then try to squeeze it in after the developments start going in. So
My concern with the way it's worded is the fact that if the award is post December 31, Bensalem is prepared to provide a 30% match for this.
Correct. And the situation, again, as I explained with that, is you are under no obligation. December comes, we don't get the grant, we could say, you know what? We have grant resources and we're going to apply for this grant, and that'll come up with the 30%. The state accepts that, we get our award. We say, sorry guys, we can't come up with the 30%, or we want to put our money someplace else, and there's no harm, no foul. It's cost the township nothing. And you, again, the way that works is it's contracted. So if we're awarded a grant, the contract comes back to the administration, to you guys. You know, you have to contract that grant.
Tony, wouldn't some of that, or match, possibly be the land itself that we allow them to
Right,
build?
I mean, it's
path?
kind of a catch-22 on this particular segment. We're not purchasing any land. It's all public, you know, right-of-way, you know, the DCNR, the park, and things of that nature. And those types of things can be considered as in-kind grants. We have, I think it's close to $2.5 million in grants already. Now, it's been dealing with bureaucracies. Sometimes one agency will allow their monies to be used as match for different grants. Sometimes they won't. We have $1 million in county open space grant that's sitting there, and all of that could go to this. So we do have the monies available to us for the grant. I just wouldn't have this council commit to a grant match before we had a clear understanding of what that really meant. So right now we're saying no match, give us the money. Hopefully that's what we get, because that would be best for all. If we ever did get that match, obviously when the grant was awarded, we'd have to come back to you and work those numbers to your satisfaction.
Okay, so then you wouldn't have any issue if we proved it based off,
Well, why don't we amend the wording to kind of accurately reflect that, you know, township, that 30% match wouldn't come out of the township budget. Township would pursue other grant avenues.
yeah.
Again,
that's
it's
fine.
an unknown,
Yeah.
it's perfectly acceptable.
Okay.
So again, I can go on to the second segment at your pleasure, Mr. President.
Go ahead, and then
Yeah.
we'll vote on them separately, but it would be good if you.
One piggybacks on the other. The other, you know, to understand again the process, this project, when it was originally engineered, was broken into 17 segments, each segment having unique characteristics, and it was easier to bite it off in those little pieces for costing out and those types of things than to take it as one long, 3.5-mile long segment. The second application is for a spur to this. The whole purpose of this segment is to connect the Cornwell's Park and Ride to the East Coast Greenway, to State Road. So this involves 3,000 linear feet of sidewalks along Station Avenue, another 900 linear feet of that asphalt trail to make that connection on State Road, and it's very significant stormwater management improvements. New stormwater management piping, 17 different stormwater inlets. This area, I think most people are familiar with it. Station Avenue, there's a little dip there and it floods out on a fairly regular basis. This would be a way, since we're putting these infrastructure improvements, to piggyback on that and correct some of those stormwater management issues that are down there. And that's also a positive benefit to all of this, obviously, and to health and safety in the township. Again, this project would, again, be awarded in December. We'd have a start in 2019 with estimated completion end of 2020, beginning of 2021. The total grant amount is a little under $2 million. So that would connect with the largest park and ride on the Northeast Corridor to our riverfront and communities, and provide safe public access from the park and ride to State Road and to those residents, with all, you know, especially the new development that's going on down there. And, you know, that entire area down there, New York Avenue and whatnot, would now have a safe public access to the train station.
I guess similar question before, the way this is worded is just a little funky. Township will fund the balance of the design costs as initial project match. What's the balance?
The same, it would be the same situation if we're asking for a no match
This is still a
grant.
no match?
Right.
Okay.
So both of them, the way that it's the same exact grant program, just two separate grant applications, subject to the same exact rules. If the award is before December, there is no match. If after December, same exact consideration as previously, and of course, modification as you recommended would be
Yeah.
appropriate with this one as well.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
Any other questions? Mr. Belfield, thank you for staying involved and doing these things for the community. Much appreciated. You put a lot of time and effort into it. And
Almost there, Mayor. Now this is for the construction. We'll actually see some bikes running up and down there. Thank you,
We'll add a couple
gentlemen.
more zeros to your paycheck. 0, 0, 0, 0. Mr. Pazzo, we can vote on both of these at the same time, correct? Since they're pretty much the same ordinances with the same matching grant. Do you have the language that
Well-
council
Yeah, why don't we,
want to do separate? We can do them separately.
why don't we lock down the language? I think the language would be the same on both, yeah.
Do you have the language that Councilman, the council people are asking for to change this?
Can I make a suggestion? I don't know if it'll work or not, but if I may make a suggestion, that, Mr. Prizzi, could we just add to that, the Bensalem is prepared to provide a 30% match for this critical project from the open space monies that's available, Bucks County open space money that's available
I don't think
currently.
that,
I don't-
that works.
Can we go with other funds that would be pursued in advance and or and we put that in there, please?
My concern at amending the language to include that is that I don't know, I'll defer to Mr. Belfield, but my concern would be including that language necessarily in the resolution itself. If, as a condition of the approval, the council is restricting where any matching funds would come from, we can do that, make that a part of the minutes. But I'm not sure, and I'm just not sure, and again, I'll defer to
Well,
Mr. Belfield,
as-
if there's language in here, because you're applying for this as a no grant application to begin with,
Right.
and whether we start to put too fine a point on the issue of matching funds for a no-match grant, whether that starts to raise a red flag on the other end.
You do bring up a valid point, similar to PennDOT. When dealing with these other agencies at the state, they have specific language in it. That's where we already played with that 30% match language already by making the broad statement, but then saying otherwhere in the application, it's a no-match application. That way, as they go through and they're checking their boxes, they check all of the boxes and say you're administratively complete, you haven't qualified your grant, it's not conditional upon anything else happening, get your grant award. I think from a technical standpoint, the time to address the concerns would be once we get the grant application approved and they come to us and they say, oh yeah, we want to give you the grant, but we'd like you to come up with a 10% match. That's when we come back to you have to approve the contract. We can't accept it without your approval. That's when you come back to the logistics of finding the funding. And like I say, it could be through existing grants we had. It could be from simply stating we conditionally accept this application depending upon the results of a DCNR application grant that we're going to see the results of in April of 2019, because that's their grant round. And that's very typical when dealing with these open space type projects. Very few of them, especially one of this scale, get funded with only one grant source. You're normally pulling in multiple grants and leveraging them to make it happen. So Mr. Pizzo does bring up a valid point. The cleaner we can make the application, the better our chances of getting it. And I can't reiterate enough, you're not committing yourself to spending any monies by accepting this, addressing these resolutions tonight. You won't commit to that until you formally sign the contract, hoping and praying that we actually get an award.
I agree with Mr. Belfield. Anytime you're dealing with a government agency and you make it even the least bit ununderstandable to them, they're going to turn it down. Where it's a clean cut. It's a zero base, we get another bite at the apple because we have to approve it when it comes in anyway. This is just, you're applying for, why make it harder and not get the grant that we could do to make public safety a better issue and have more trails for our kids
Sure.
and our family members, so. To me, I would think it would be leave it the same, leave it as is, and then, no, that's my opinion.
Why don't we just
agree.
delete the last sentence of the first paragraph on each of these, and that cleans it up. And then we don't even have the discussion of the match.
Okay, but if we do, and it goes and it's.
Well, again, this is just for the application of the grant, though.
Can I guess the question though is that very similar resolutions, but the last sentence is different on each one.
Right, that's the
I mean,
issue here.
So, and I'm just not necessarily prepared to say that I'm willing to provide a 30% match until I know where those funds are coming from. And when you approve something, I just would like to make sure that it does in fact come in front. So I'm okay with approving it the way it states, but then making a contingent that it has to come back in front of us then, once the grant is received.
There's no other way than that to happen. There's no other way for this township to commit to this grant application without it coming back to the administration of council. Because literally, it's a contract. They send you a stack, we've gone through this quite a few times. They send you a stack of papers, and it's got all that boilerplate on it that Mr. Pizzo had spoken to earlier, and a bunch of other conditions and restrictions on what you can use the money for, what you can't use the money for. And that's all gone through and signed off on, and you, as council, are going to have to approve that. And for whatever reason, something changes in the mindset of the council. You can deny that contract for any reason.
Okay, so just to confirm that it's going to come back in front of us then?
Yes, and to be honest with you, and no offense to this august body, but this is one of those check-off boxes. Since the application is coming from the township, it's required that a resolution be passed for no other reason that the state is then aware that you have all been notified this and are aware that this application is being submitted. So that formality is the first step to go over. The hard part is next, is getting these applications in and getting by the end of the month, and there's some paperwork that has to go in with that, mostly the boilerplate stuff again. And then, once it's uploaded into their system at the end of the month, waiting until December to see if we get the grants or not.
Okay.
Understood. I still don't see why we can't just delete the last sentence of the first paragraph on each of these. They're inconsistent with each other. They are the thorn in this. So I say we just remove those and move forward with the grant application. And then it'll come in front of us, and we'll have to find any match if necessary.
So what would happen, so you're saying if it comes before us later on, we will be willing to consider the 30% match that's on this piece of paper now, but you're not willing to vote, you're not saying that, then what did
No.
you just say?
I don't want this to reflect that we're going to match it.
But you just said if it comes before us later on, you'd be willing to consider a source to.
Well, because
match
if
the
we
30%.
can't designate a source now, because that would muddy the waters, that we can do at a later time.
All this is to apply for the grant. It's
I
not
understand.
accepting the grant, the
I
accepting the
get
grant at 30%. So why are we changing it and taking the chance of not getting the grant because we changed something in the resolution? That is all I'm asking.
Was the wording of this resolution dictated by the Commonwealth?
I believe the wording in the resolution comes from the application package and instructions, so it's standard language.
And we do know
wasn't-
that we
was
have a
drafted
source.
by-
Including the designation of 30% match for this one, for this critical project, and fund the balance of the design cost as initial project match. Those words are from the application?
I didn't write the grant application, that was written by Gilmore and Associates, our grant writers, but the application language is part of the application package. Whether there's a difference because of the nature of the projects, and they need to qualify that, as I said, one is, and that's why they're broken out into two, is just the straightforward greenway trail, boom. This other
Got
one
it.
is this sidewalk with a lot of infrastructure, and quite frankly, that may be the reason for the language, not so much the grant grant match.
I understand all
but
that.
the
I'm
engineering and
worried
all the
about
other
the
aspects
wording.
that they're phrasing.
This is a project that we have been all in for many, many, many years, And for us to...
Are we all in with committing taxpayer dollars? Because that's the way this reads. That's
No,
my
it does
only
not read
concern.
that. It does, we know that we have the source from the Bucks County open space money that we have already, and there's going to be some additional money, I understand, since I'm on the Bucks County Planning Commission, that's going to be available because people didn't use
So
it
that'll
also.
be designated for this stuff.
Now, just stop for a second. This argument, or no argument, this debate that we're talking about right now would carry on if you got the grant, if they
Got it.
gave us the grant. This is only a resolution to say we're going for the grant, that the state knows, that the council approves that there's a resolution to get the grant. This debate can go on afterwards if we can pay for it, can't pay for it. You don't get the grant. It's that simple.
Okay.
It's very simple.
Are we going to vote on this as presented, or are we looking to make a change?
I'll put a motion on the floor and see where it goes, that we accept and vote on the agenda item number 7 and number 8, resolutions for the Bensalem Greenway end segment, ID 8161106, as well as state and station pedestrian improvement, which is the ID of 8146395, as presented to us this evening.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Beltran.
Yeah, thanks.
Number 9, consideration of a minor land development plan, applicant Millennial Properties and Investment LLC, location 4851 Street Road, proposed use parking lot, zoning classification BP, business professional, tax parcel 2-4-184-1.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. I have a jump drive. Should I put that in for the board members?
Joe, wasn't there a problem with
At your last meeting, this application was on the agenda. In reviewing the notices to adjacent property owners, which are called for under the township ordinance governing land development and subdivision plans, it was determined that the notices were incomplete. And so what we did was table this matter forward to this evening's meeting, a date certain of tonight, to give the applicant an opportunity to either bring in a complete set of notices or to re-notify the property owners and to get us the required and full proof of the same. So
Yeah,
we
and I
should,
have the notification.
certainly.
Some of them objection, some don't have any return, and those are the 4 addresses. That's
Thank you. Okay. I'll give that back to you. Okay, you can go back over there. Thank you.
We're going to wait on you, Mr. Kaiser, to make sure we have everything.
So much pressure.
Bedtime. This is why I should have piped in music on the, yeah, right.
You have a copy of the plan? Any chance?
That sounds about right. If it's that big.
Do we have a copy of the plan? No.
Here you, Joe?
Sorry to put you through this, Joe, but I don't want to go through this whole thing if we still don't have it right.
No, I understand, and I don't feel like it feels like it's deja vu all over again. But give me a moment.
I have one word that I can give you. Sorry.
Mr. Pizzo, if you're looking for the date of the plans, they are November 20th, 2014. If you're questioning maybe how old the plans are,
That's what I was looking for.
that's the latest data that appears on the plans.
Okay. So we have Bucks County Technology Park, 4800 Street Road. We have Lewis Powell, 34-6 Clark, okay. We have RD Partnerships, 3037 Pine Road. Okay. And we have Samuel Constantini. Can I see you for just a second, sir? Okay, this was the missing piece of the puzzle. So the gentleman has provided me with copies of the 4 letters that were mailed. The letters are dated July 11, 2018, advising the 4 adjacent property owners of this evening's hearing. It says it's 7:30, but that's fine. I think we're well past that hour at this point anyway. And we've got the proof of mailing for those 4 property owners, and you indicated that those were mailed both by certified mail, return receipt, and by regular mail, correct?
Correct. Both.
They're in order, Mr. Polari.
Okay, can you state your name and address for the record? Then we'll
Yes.
go through, Mr. Gans's letter.
Thank you. Terry Chong, Chong, 34 Amsterdam Avenue, Harlem, PA 18966.
What's your first name?
Terry, Terry. And I'm here to submit my request to build a parking lot on the properties that I own on Street Road.
Okay, do you have a copy of Don Nacarato's letter from March 15, 2018? The engineer's letter? Do you have a copy of that?
No, I don't have a copy of it. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, so chapter C, one from the zoning hearing board. This zoning hearing board was done before this gentleman.
Pass that down to Ron. That's fine, just pass that on. Ron. Now give us the Ron. Pass it to Ron.
I received the zoning variance.
Okay, so the zoning variances that you went forward, the same zoning variances that are on the plan now?
Yes.
Chapter 201, land development. We're going to go through that, each item. Number 1, plan is requesting 4 waivers from the land development requirements. Number 1, you're looking for, want to tell us what you're looking to do here?
Yes. What I'm looking to do here is to have 9 parking spaces, 1 for handicap in the front of the building, and 8 parking spaces in the back of the building. The reason why we ask for the front is the entrance at the front is level with the landscape, whereas the road going to the back is slanted. If we put the handicap parking in the back, it's almost impossible for a handicapped person to wheel him or herself up to the front of the building. That's why we ask for variance to put a handicap space in the front. And the rest of the parking space is to meet the parking requirement for a building that is 1,050 square feet.
Okay, so you're asking for a waiver on curbs and sidewalks, additional right-of-way on the road widening along Lang Avenue, and to not require you to put sidewalks along the street road corridor, correct?
Yes, and at this time there is no sidewalk in the front right next to Street Road. So we just expect to have the same setup as what we have now.
There's sidewalk there now?
No, there's no sidewalk.
Okay, but you'll have to pay in lieu of it. The board approves it, you're going to pay for the sidewalks in lieu of getting the waiver. So one way or the other, you're paying for the sidewalks, so it'll just go to the township, correct?
Okay.
Okay, you went through the parking. You're looking for a waiver to permit grading within 3 feet of the property line?
Yes, within 3 feet, because the property is very narrow with the existing building, the way it's positioned, there's only, I believe, 18 feet of clearance on each side. And if we have to meet the clearance requirement, then we would not be able to put a driveway going to the back and then return from the parking space back to the front. That's why we're asking for variance to have that within 3 feet of our property line here.
And you're looking to not have to put curbs in the parking areas? We're asking for a waiver of that also?
Right. With the variance that we received from the township, I don't think there was any curb requirement, and all we have is to have shrubs around the parking space. That's why we put it down for the application as such.
Mr. Haynes, you can jump in at any time.
That is a land development requirement, but not a zoning requirement. So if you wish, you would be advised to grant a waiver for sure.
I don't understand what the trench is.
Which one are you at?
I'm down at number
Oh,
3.
it's a detail. It's a detail on the plan showing how they're going to do some restoration work. And it's the same detail, even though it's for different conditions. So we just want them to put the proper detail on there. Can you do a D3? Can your draftsman take care of that?
D3, the plan provided. Yeah, I can ask my architect to include
All
that.
right, that's a will comply.
Yes.
And what about the anti-slip?
Yeah, your engineer will have to provide for D4.
And I believe the plan, one of the architectural plan that he provided included that already.
Well, if it doesn't, you will comply.
Yes.
And the other one, Mr. President, is the 7-foot planting strip between the building and the driveways and so forth. Again, he's got such tight conditions there, that he can't provide it.
So we would have to grant a waiver for that as well?
Yes. Everything in D is a waiver, a request. Everything in paragraph D.
What's the drop-off on D1, Section C, to permit grading within 3 feet of the property line? What's the grading going down? I mean, it's leveling off so they can get cars going up and down.
I think he's
How
trying to match the grading.
how much does it drop down?
I think he's matching the grading as it goes down. So all those properties go to the rear toward Lang.
All right, so it's
I don't
not
think it's gonna be like a
parallel to
wall.
it's not parallel to the adjacent properties, it's running,
Back
towards
to
it,
the
okay.
parking lots.
all right.
And the grading will be between the driveway and the adjacent property line.
So all that water that rolls back is back onto Lang Avenue because there's no curbing or nothing?
Well, that's why we should probably require curbing to get the stormwater into that basin at the back.
Yeah, we have a basin back here that will be added for stormwater.
But I believe the council feels that you're going to need the curbing to direct the water to that basin and not to the adjacent owners.
I believe my architect told me this will be deep enough for the water to funnel down towards the basin.
It's not the basin, it's getting the water from your driveways and parking lot to the basin. It should be contained by curbing so it doesn't go to adjacent owners.
Okay.
So I think the council is not willing to provide the relief for curbing. You'll have to put that in.
So we have to put curbing here.
All the way down?
All the
yes.
way down. And then curbing on this side as well?
Yes, and then all the way back to there.
Okay.
Because Lang Avenue's taken on all the water from those properties.
Every
there.
one of them.
They
Yeah.
can't take any more.
No.
It's flooded and it's been for years. And to add more to it, I understand that your property doesn't allow you, so you're trying to fit a lot of things into the area that can't make it happen, but it's not
Right.
fair to the homeowner be behind you, take on your water because you're sloping down, putting it down there and trying to jam all this stuff into one. It's a lot of variances.
And when you say curbing, is that 3 inch or 6 inch
6 inch
strip
high,
that all the way down?
18-inch curbing, 6 inches reveal.
Okay.
Support any questions?
Yeah, if we go above that in section C of this letter for zoning, I understand that number 1 covers the 2 variances that have already been granted, but 2, 3, and 4, sounds like they need additional zoning variances. Can we even act on this without those variances?
It depends on the gentleman's answer to the question, is he going to comply with those comments? If he's going to comply, then he
Then
doesn't
no.
need a variance. If he needs a variance, then consistent with the way you've typically done things, you would tell him to go back, get his variance, and then come back and see us after that.
I think Mr. Sloan is correct in saying that our review indicated that 2 variances were given, 1A and 1B. But 2, 3, and 4 are additional zoning violations, which would require additional zoning relief.
So the question, sir, is the letter that Mr. Gans put in front of you, under section C2. Mr. Gans has spelled out that a landscape plan must be prepared, providing an inventory and location of the existing vegetation, as well as any proposed supplemental plantings, and the plan has to comply with section 232-592-2A of the Township zoning ordinance. Is that something that you are going to do, or is that something you're going to ask the zoning hearing board for a variance from?
I believe that one of the plan has a 15-feet buffer at the end. Does that mean we need to enlarge that to 20 feet, and will that make that compliant?
Well, I don't want to speak for Mr. Gans, but I believe it means that you have to provide the township with a landscaping plan that complies with the township zoning ordinance,
Okay.
which I'm going to assume based on this letter, as of March 15, you hadn't done that, and I'm going to assume, Mr. Gans, that that's still the case today.
That is correct. Can your professionals provide that to the township?
I can ask him to provide that.
Well, it's not a question of whether you're going to ask him to do it, or are you going to provide one to the township?
Yes.
Okay,
So that
so
would be a
that's a
will
will
comply.
comply. Item 3 on Mr. Gans' letter under the zoning section says, your plan indicates driveway widths in certain locations that are 12 feet, which is less than the minimum one-way aisle width of 15 feet, which means one of 2 things. You either have to revise the plan to make those 15 feet wide, or you have to go to the zoning hearing board and ask them for a variance to allow them to be 12 feet wide. Which of those do you intend to do? Do you intend to revise the plan to make the driveway widths 15 feet, or are you going to ask the zoning hearing board to allow them to be 12 feet?
Is the 15 feet towards the end, or was it right next to the building?
The 15 feet is the requirement. The 12 feet is what you've got on the sides of the building, it looks like.
Both sides of the building is 12 feet.
I'm going to go based on my very limited ability to read what's up on the screen, that it doesn't seem like he's able to make them 15 feet. So
No,
by
he-
definition,
It's physically, he would require a variance from that requirement.
so you're going to have to go to the zoning hearing board to get a variance for number 3, in the opinion of the township engineer. For item number 4, the site includes slopes between 8% and 15%. It appears that more than the 40% of the total steep slope area has been regraded, which is not permitted. So that violates section 232-59A2A1 of the township zoning ordinance. In order to rectify that situation, you're either going to have to get a variance to allow the the steep slope area as it's currently shown, or in the alternative, regrade the property so that it is in compliance with that particular section of the township zoning ordinance. If you're going to the zoning hearing board for one variance, you might as well go for two, but I'm not your attorney nor your engineer, neither of which I might note are here this evening.
Right.
And might make this process a whole lot easier. So as to item 4, you need a variance as well.
So it's been this board's,
Gans, I had a question for you. The environmental board also had recommended an oversized basin. Based on the plan here, would you say that that's oversized, or is this just a normal size? And maybe we should also advise the applicant that he review that letter or that recommendation.
You could ask him to have their engineer review that request.
Okay.
The post-development seems to be favorable as far as the size of the basin.
The basin, as shown and computed, meets all of our requirements, meets or exceeds all requirements.
Okay.
but if the water's running down and there's no way to take it over to the basement, it's going to go down on the line.
That's why we
and
need
go
the
into-
curbs.
It's going to go into people's property.
Mr. Gans, the township traffic engineer review notes that a wall is proposed to be constructed along the ingress drive aisle. Is that something that's going to require any special approval by the township?
Only when he submits the building plans, it would be reviewed at that time.
Okay.
Or I should say construction plans.
Is there anybody have any other things before we get to the?
I mean, we've only addressed some of the issues that we've got in front of us that were presented. Have you received a copy of these various letters?
I believe I have seen this letter.
Not just that one, but there's one from the Bucks County Planning Commission. There's one from the Fire Rescue Department. There's one from the Environmental Advisory Board, the Traffic Safety letter. They've all got multiple concerns with the property. If you haven't seen those letters, it sounds like you have to at the very least go back to zoning. I'd have your architect and engineers take a look at all these comments and figure out what other changes are necessary or how you're going to address them before you come back.
And I would have them here so that we can ask the questions of them and not say, well, I can or I might, because that's not going to fly. You're going to have answers to it. So having a professional here can give us the answers that we really need. So the board normally will not hear something that needs to go back to zoning first. So I think we need to clean it up. Maybe you can meet with Mr. Gans and he can get you all the letters that you should have so that you can make sure you go through them, discuss the other things that are going on.
Is Mr. Byrne still your engineer?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I note that Mr. Byrne has been copied on almost all of these letters. So he's on the Planning Commission letter, he's on the Fire Marshal review letter, he's on the Traffic Engineers review letter. So the engineer for this project has all of this information.
But he's not here.
However, that is
Have you,
also true.
are you still continuing to use his services?
Yes.
As I understand, he hasn't been contacted in quite some time.
When we submit the land development application, he was the one that reviewed it and
Okay.
sent us a draft application. So
Well, as Mr. Pizzo is recommending, Mr. Byrne has seen all of these reviews and has them. You should meet with your engineer to go over all the items in all the reviews and also prepare your variance application, all that before you come back.
okay. And should I ask him to attend the meeting?
Yes.
Would that be advisable?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So here's our additional issue. As council is aware, the municipality's planning code requires you to act on this plan within a certain amount of time. I would suggest that at this point, based on the way this evening and the prior evening have gone, that we are probably several months away from this matter being able to come back before you, because the plan's going, well, assuming that there are no other revisions necessary for the plan, it's going to have to go to the zoning hearing board. This is July. If they act quickly, they could be on a September agenda.
Is it in our best interest maybe to deny the plan and have him come back and resubmit it? Or have him pull the plan and come back and resubmit once everything's...
That would be my suggestion, but in the alternative, if you're inclined to table it out into September or October, we would need an extension of time, a written extension of time from the applicant for that to happen.
I mean, I would prefer that this plan is cleaned up and everything's on the plan straight and not having to go through all this. And if you're going for variances, go to the variance. And if you want to pull the plan and then resubmit it when it's all ready to go this time, and review it, have your engineer review it with Mr. Gans first, make sure the next time you come, we can get it in, hear it properly, and go through it, and then make our decision that way. It's up to you what you want to do. I mean, if
In that case, I think I'm better off starting from scratch. And honestly, I didn't know there were so many missing pieces. I know of Mr. Gans' letter, the fire department, but I'm not aware of the other 2 or 3 that were missing. So thank you for pointing that out.
Better denying and let him come back and resubmit, or do you feel him holding it on his own and come back?
Unless he wants to, on the record, formally withdraw the application at this time, with an intention to resubmit the plan after he's had an opportunity to meet again with his engineer of choice and perhaps an attorney.
As a matter of record, does it make any difference whether I withdraw or you give me a denial?
Well, if we deny, you're going to start from scratch. If we withdraw it, you're going to start from scratch. So it's up to you which direction you want to go. But to me, if you want to withdraw on the record, we can put it aside. If we deny it, then you got to go back to zoning and...
In that case, let me withdraw it for now. I'll go back to Mr. Byrne and figure out what I need to do.
Okay. So you understand, Sarah, well, first of all, you are the applicant for this particular project, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that what you're doing at this time is withdrawing from consideration by the township the minor land development plan for Millennium Properties and Investment LLC located at 4851 Street Road, tax map parcel 2-4-184-1. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's your understanding that at this point you've asked the township not to consider that plan nor to take any further action on this plan, and you've indicated to the township your intent to resubmit that plan to the township at a later date, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Actually,
Take a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
where did you get this one you gave me?
The agenda is consideration of a preliminary final land development plan, applicant Bensalem Village Condominium Association, location 1068 Byberry Road, proposed use single-family dwellings, zoning classifications R3, tax parcel 2-94-56.
Plaisted from Tri-State Engineers. Plaisted. Okay, thank you. Okay, as just mentioned, the current owner of the property is Bensalem Village Condominium Association, located at southwest corner of Byberry Road and Bensalem Boulevard. Right now it's R3 zoning, and what they are proposing is to subdivide a lot of about 6.6 acres, which is wooded right now, into four separate parcels. 3 of them will be approximately quarter-acre lots for future development of single-family homes, and the remainder would be all about 5.8 acres would be dedicated to the township for open space at this point. There are no natural resources on the site except for the woodlands, and the area where the houses, or the properties for housing would be put aren't as wooded as the rest of it on that. We discussed this project with township staff and a sketch plan. The township agreed that it was a viable project. Based on Mr. Gans's letter of March 8th, there were several waivers that were requested. One was for the allowance of the drawing, as you see up there, to be at 1:50 scale instead of the 1:30 or 1:40. 1:50 was chosen for this because it's a rather simple plan and it could all fit on one page. To change the size of the drawing would end up being 2 sheets at that point. We're also asking for preliminary and final subdivisions to be submitted simultaneously per section 201-43C56, and to defer all improvements in the design to the future owners or developers of the property. Right now, all the condominium association wishes to do is to subdivide the lots, and that's it. They have no intention of being a builder or a developer of that property. The idea would be to sell the 3 lots at some later time for money for the Bensalem Village Condominium Association to use for improvements on their property itself.
That's it.
Yes, that's pretty much it.
That's it.
Mr. Paizo, do you have the advertisements?
Yes, while we were on break, a representative of the applicant provided me with the proofs of advertising, or I'm sorry, proofs of notice to the adjacent property owners. Everything appears to be in order.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for the board?
So it looks like a great project. Good for the township, good for you, good for everybody.
I think so. What we are requesting is some of the requirements for, on there for building footprints and for sewer and water to be deferred until such time as the properties are developed. And either that could be at the discretion of the council, whether it comes through as a land development project for those at a future time or during the building permit phase of the operation.
Have you reached out, or has anybody reached out to you about purchasing those 3 lots, the proposed lots?
State your name, sir.
Can you come up, please?
Has anyone approached you about buying the lots?
Yeah, my name is Jeff Nowak, N-O-W-A-K. I represent Bensalem Village Association. We've had some inquiries, but we've shut them down. We haven't taken anything because we didn't have any approval to do so. So there was some interest.
There's interest, but nothing.
There's interest, but that's it.
Okay,
We said, no, we can't do anything until we have council approval.
okay. Why did you go with this particular breakdown? I only ask because it seems that these lots are a little smaller than the lots on Byberry Road are right now. It seems it would have maybe making more sense to draw those lines a little differently, maybe break it up into 3 parcels, 1 large one, and then 2 for, future development, as opposed to 3 crammed in there.
Well, we have to have some, our condominium association has to have a certain amount of open space.
Sure.
So it was determined that the 6 acres that is going to the township, that would be the open space. we need that space, you know, in order to
Sure,
meet the
I understand
requirements. And so what was left with were those 3 lots. And that's why we went with the,
Well, I
with
guess
that particular
my
drawing.
question then is why those 3 lots and why not break that space into 2 lots? To be more consistent with the spacing of residential lots that
1,200
currently
square
exist.
feet is, I mean, they're relatively large lots.
Again, it's to be consistent with what seems to be already on Byberry Road.
I think they are consistent. They're within the zoning itself, and they're larger
Yeah,
than what's
maybe you're right.
required.
They're
So
just
they're
not,
certainly,
is it just that they're not as deep as the other lots?
they're certainly within the
Actually-
zoning, and they're larger than required. They're not going to ask for any variances.
When we
Those
first
lots?
started out, actually, they were 7,500 square foot lots.
Okay,
And then it was resurveyed and redone, and they became 12,000 square foot lots.
Okay.
So they were smaller,
Right.
and this
And
is
you were able
all
to
we
get
could get out of that's as large as we could go, and keeping
keep
within the open space.
requirements.
Correct.
Got it, okay. That answers my question, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions on the board?
Just a few notes, Mr. Polari, if we might. As Mr. Plaisted indicated, the largest of the lots is to be dedicated to the township as township open space. That's 5.8 acres of wooded area. As part of the conditions of approval, should council approve this subdivision, would be the execution of a deed conveying the open space to the township, contemporaneous with the recording of the subdivision plan. Secondly, there are, I believe, 4 items under Section E of Mr. Gann's review letter, all 4 of which have to do with the engineering aspects of the plan and some of the language. All 4 of those items, I assume, are will comply items.
Yes, they are.
So a motion should reflect that. And finally, consistent with what Mr. Plaisted said, what's being requested and what council is doing, if council approves this application, is granting only a subdivision plan and not a land development plan. And so a note should be added to the plan prior to recording that indicates that a separate land development application will be required prior to the issuance of any building permits for the property, making it clear that this is not a land development approval at this time. So that note should be acceptable in form and content to the township solicitor and the township engineer.
We will add that note to the plan if it's so accepted.
Yes, those are the only items I had, sir.
Any other questions from the board before I go
Yeah,
to the public?
just one question. I'm assuming, I believe this came from the environmental board. There was a question about the environmental assessment being done on the property prior to be deeded to the township. Is there any environmental concerns with that particular property, or are we aware of?
I do not believe that the township has performed a phase 1 on the land, no.
I think the only thing they looked into was wetlands, and there is no wetlands where the homes were to be built. There's wetlands elsewhere on the site, which will be undisturbed.
So that's certainly something that the administration can consider having performed before we accept the deed for the property. I don't know that we want to put that requirement on the applicant who's donating the land to the township.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak for or against this? Come up front, sir. Then I have to state your name and address for the record.
It's Craig Kelly, 5053 Bensalem Boulevard, directly across the street from this project. I have a creek next to my house, runs under Bensalem Boulevard and into this property. I'm just wondering how any of this is going to affect that creek and the runoff.
I don't believe that will at all. They'll have to follow the land development plan.
That would be addressed when they come in for a land development. This is
Okay.
only for lot lines.
Oh, okay,
But for future construction, they'll have to submit what they plan to do there.
okay.
And we do take that pretty seriously with allowing things like that.
Yeah, that's all I'm concerned about.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one come forward?
My name's Joan Gazzardo. I'm at 5111 Bensalem Boulevard. Right on, pardon me? Gazzardo, Guzzardo. Okay, I'm right at the traffic light there, right at Bensalem Boulevard and Byberry Road. And I was just wondering where the exit would be coming out of these homes are done, on Byberry Road or Bensalem Boulevard?
Byberry.
On Byberry Road? And at what part of Byberry Road would they be coming out of? I'm concerned about the traffic. The traffic's gotten very...
In front of each house.
The property is in between the dentist office that's there and that other gentleman down the street, and he's got some trailers or so forth in the driveway.
Okay.
We're talking about that piece of property there. You're talking about 3 different driveways, so you'd have to...
Okay, so it
At
will...
least 300 feet away from Bensalem Boulevard would be the first driveway.
Okay, because I was just concerned about the traffic
No,
there.
definitely not on Bensalem Boulevard.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Bernard Patton. I live at 1073 Byberry Road. Pretty much Bernard Patton. Yep. 1073 Byberry Road, pretty much right across the street from this. I guess I always believed that that was wetlands. There could only be one house put there because one house was there that it burnt down, and I was always told that only one, because it was wetlands, only it can be replaced with one house. Then the other traffic is, I agree with the other lady that was here. Since the casino went in, there's a lot more traffic goes up and down that highway. 3 more driveways into that, and pretty much all the driveways that are down there, they're gonna, there's more to keep an eye out for 2 cars backing out of a driveway. You got all that. Nobody does 25 miles an hour down that road. And it's a shame that all the wildlife is in, the wildlife that's in that little forest. There's deers, hawks, everything else. Pretty much all the trees are gonna be ripped down, and where does all that go?
There'll be at least 5 acres left open. They'll
Right.
all remain as is.
Right.
It's almost 6 acres, right?
Almost 6
5.8,
acres.
yeah.
Pretty much not enough, right off of Byberry Road there.
Just those 3, can you see the lots on the drawing?
Yep,
There's
they're all,
3, that's the
all the
only part
road
that will
front.
be developed at all.
Yeah,
Nothing beyond that,
all the road frontage.
just the road frontage.
Yeah, so you're gonna have 3 driveways pretty much put right in there.
That's correct.
Basically backed up. I mean, I totally agree with that gentleman right there. They're gonna be pretty close to each other. I can see 2 houses. 3, it's pretty much like houses right on top of each other. That's about all the concern I got. All right.
If council were to take a look at the location map, you'll see that the lots on the opposite side of Byberry Road, that zoning district over there is R2. So that's the same zoning, same size lots as are being proposed by this subdivision. And again, it should be noted, as council is aware, that 6 acres of woodlands are being preserved if this plan is approved, and 36,000 square feet of land would be dedicated to the to 3 lots for the 3 single-family houses.
My name's Ken Freiheit, F-R-E-I-H-E-I-T. I'm actually the gentleman that's connected to the lots. At the last meeting when they proposed this, I sat down with the guys from the board, and hopefully we have a good solution. I asked to actually buy those lots. I'm not going to develop them. I'm going to attach them into my parcel, so they'll stay exactly the way they are. So we won't lose the wildlife. There won't be any more parking, no more cars, no more problems. As long as we can come up with a good resolution to fair market price, I don't see a problem with it, and I hope you guys allow it to go through. On my heart, we're not developing it. It's going to be just the way it is. So, thank you.
Can I ask a question on that?
Do we have anybody else that would like to come forward? Seeing no one else come forward, public comment is closed. Go ahead.
Thank you. What's the value of subdividing into these 3 lots if you do have a potential buyer of this particular piece of property?
Unknown.
Howard Solomon, 416 Rutgers Court. Solomon, S-O-L-O-M-O-N. We've had a few offers in the past ranging in $300,000, $350,000, but they were based on R3, and obviously R3 is not going to be able to be done on this property. It's R2. So realistically, we don't have a dollar price on the fair market value of this land. We're willing to entertain offers and go from there. We don't have a target at this point. Maybe 70,000, per lot, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Are you considering this gentleman's offer?
We haven't even talked numbers yet.
Okay.
We're not even at that stage yet. We wanted to make sure we got council approval before we started addressing any offers. We're not comfortable making any kind of arrangement until everything's finalized. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions from the board? If not, then a motion would be in order.
I have another quick question, Mr.
Go ahead.
The concern about the wetlands, if the land development was to come in front of us, if it was to be found that there was wetland issues, certainly that would be addressed prior to any land development approval.
Definitely.
Yes.
You're probably on the 3 properties you're talking about, right?
Yes,
3 properties.
on the 3 property, yep.
Yeah. If this were to get denied, would you consider speaking with some of these prospective buyers to get a more definitive future plan for this property? My concern is I don't want to see 3 houses put up on Byberry Road that are inconsistent with the rest of the property on that side of Byberry Road. It might be consistent with the lot sizes and the zoning on the other side of the street.
With all due respect, I think we're getting... Yeah, my name's Jeff Nowak, N-O-W-A-K, 559 Trinity Court. I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. The only thing Bensalem Village wanted to do was to have this as an asset, as a sellable asset. That's all. We want it in the bank. That's our rainy day fund. So if there comes a time when we wanted to sell this land that was ours to sell, we could do that and be within our open space laws and everything else.
But why not do it at the time then?
Because we're not developers. Well, like I said, we're just, listen, we still have to, as a condominium association, we still have to get 80% of our condominium, of our residents, 281 residents, to sign off on this.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't do it, the point is moot.
Got it.
Okay? So, because it's not ours to sell. It's the associations to sell. It's the people who own that. So if they say, no, we want to keep it as an asset, we want to keep it in the bank, fine, we're fine with that. Our job, our duty as a council was to make sure that that was an asset that was available to our residents.
I understand.
Okay,
Thank you.
does that?
It doesn't alleviate the concern, but I understand your
I
point.
understand, but that's
Yeah.
not our concern. If that would be the person who bought it or has to develop it. We're not developing it at all.
Okay. Thank you.
You don't have anyone here from the association?
They are from
No, I'm saying any other homeowners that are in there that are for or against? Okay.
We're all volunteers and members.
Okay.
I'm Mark Cohen, 637 Yale Court. Thank you, everybody, for giving us this consideration. Bensalem Village is 40-year-old. Some of the properties are 40 years old, so we would hope to, use this money to upgrade Bensalem Village and make it look better and better for Bensalem as a whole. And with that corner, three beautiful houses will enhance that side of the road. So we hope it's a win, and also we're dedicating the 6 acres back to the township. So we appreciate the support, and also being on the school board, we hope to get some more taxes in and for everybody. So let's hope it's a win all the way around. Thank you.
Yes.
Any
Well,
other questions from the board?
That's inconsistent with what was just said. I mean, Mr. Cohen, you just said that the association does want to sell it. Well, previously, we just heard somebody say that they don't want to sell it, they just want the possibility. So I guess I'll speak for myself and not the other gentleman up here, but it's a little confusing now. What's the intention?
Jeff Nowak, Trinity Court. What I said was, it's not ours as a council, it's not our right to sell it. We can't, as a council, sit around and say, oh, we vote to sell this. We can only get this to the point where we can offer it to our residents, the 281 residents of Bensalem Village, to say, if you want to sell it, if there's a time that you want to sell it, you have to sign off on it. We have to get 80% of people to vote on it in order for us to get to that point of development. So right now, as we sit here today, development is, well, it's not up to us. Like I say, it's up to our residents. And we're not even there yet. We haven't done anything with the residents. We haven't even told them, because there's nothing to tell them. We have to be able to get an offer made to us in order to bring it to the residents. We just can't have them say, okay, we got approval from council that you sign off. We have to have a hard number to give them and say, this is the number we're getting for there. You have to sign off on that now. That's what we have to do as a that's what the state requires us to do as a condominium association.
Okay.
All right, so if you had an offer based on the subdivision that you're proposing this evening, and the other gentleman who came up just a moment ago also made you an offer, you would present that to the
Residents, we'd have to-
residents, and they would make a vote on that. Is that-
That's correct. We'd have to take that offer to each and every one of the residents, the homeowners, and they would have to approve or disapprove. If 80%, that's a big number. If they 80% approve, then we're able to move forward with the sale of it. But that's a long shot.
So the bottom line for you would be, in my opinion, would be, regardless of whether there be 3 homes built there or maintained as the one solid lot, if the money is the same, that's all you would be interested in.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct?
Yes.
All right. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Howard Solomon again, 416 Rutgers Court. I think, as I explained, we're at the point where we want to be in a position where we could start entertaining offers for the property. That's all we really want to do. Once we get offers in, as Jeff said, we could present it to the homeowners in Bensalem Village. And as Jeff also said, we need 80% of the unit owners to approve whatever offer we get to move forward. Right. Which is, again, a lot of work, but I think it's something that could possibly get done. But we can't even address that till we get to the point where we can start looking and getting offers. And
But
that's-
if, I understand exactly what you're saying, and it's our decision to make this whether an approval or not approval, but if you're interested in having that property appraised for the 3 lots, and whether they were subdivided or not, if you had a proposal for someone that said, we're going to give the township 5.8 acres, and this other gentleman is willing to pay X amount of dollars, wouldn't that be a logical proposal to make to the residents of?
Sure, absolutely.
So. would it
Whatever
make-
offer we receive, we're going to present to our unit owners. Yeah, ultimately, it's their decision to decide what they want to do with the
Well,
property.
would it make sense to postpone this decision and take the consideration of this gentleman here as for what he had offered you or what he's going to offer you? And if it didn't meet your requirement or your thoughts of the amount, then proceed on this subdivision? I don't know, I'm asking that. It just, I mean, that was
That
it.
seems reasonable. Yeah, I guess that's where the confusion is. If you have these people that are interested, I don't, even if it wouldn't be a final offer, a potential offer, potential
But wouldn't the
sale.
wouldn't these guys have the right to go out and see what the
Sure.
market will bear? We're saying, let's give it to this gentleman, but not give them the opportunity to see what the market will bear. How can we do that as a board? I don't think as a board, we should be telling people how to sell their property. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that we should say, hey, here's one guy that wants to buy it. We're not going to go through this plan. You're going to have to take whatever.
No, I think that's a great point. I think it's our duty on this board of whether or not we want to see this land developed and more houses built and more traffic entered that might not be safe and might not match the existing surroundings, or do we want to see this section, these 3 lots, 2 lots, 1 lot, whatever it gets subdivided, bought up and preserved as open space, consolidated into another lot. That's what we have to decide here.
I'm just asking if it's a viable interest of you coming here before us to consider that. That's what I'm asking.
I would have to discuss it with some of the other board members and see.
Let me ask you a question. We have 4 members of the board here tonight, one's on vacation. You guys want to go back and take a look at this, relook at it, and then come back when there's a full board here and be able to get the whole board? That would be our next, we can continue it to our next meeting and give you the opportunity, or do you want to take the vote tonight, do what you're going to do and take the vote tonight? I think you're hearing what everybody's saying here. Do you want to go back and talk about it and see what's in your best interest, or which way you want to go forward, and then come back when you have a full board here?
Yeah, I think it's probably in the best interest of our condominium association, the best interest of the residents to come back when there's a full board.
And it gives you time to think about what you heard here tonight.
It does.
And be able to take that into
And
consideration.
also, it will give you guys an opportunity to understand where we're coming from as well. Again, we just don't feel comfortable taking offers for land that hasn't been approved by council here. I mean, we just can't do it. Even if that man comes up and says, oh, we'll offer you X amount of dollars, we
Oh, you don't
can't,
have a legal agreement. I completely understand that.
we can't say, oh, yeah, sure, we'll take that.
Sure.
It's impossible to do.
I understand.
So
and
this is the cart before the horse. This is the horse here.
Our feeling is, we've had this land for 40 years.
Sure.
It's cost us a lot of money over the 40 years, maintaining it, cleaning up people, dumping stuff on it.
Yeah.
Our feeling at this point is pretty much anything we can get of a reasonable offer will be acceptable to the board, whether the residents approve, the owners approve it or not. We can't say until we actually go out there. But
I completely
to me,
understand.
It's money in the coffers of the association, which we desperately can use.
It is. From our perspective, or at least from my perspective, if it gets approved like this in this configuration, though, then it becomes a whole nother issue. Then it's subdivided. Then it's zoned for that. And so even if you sell it, somebody can start to build a house there. Personally, I don't think putting 3 houses in that configuration is a good idea for this area. I think that preserving those lots is a great idea. And if this gentleman out here wants to purchase those and consolidate them into his residential lot, I'm all for that. I'm not against subdividing these parcels off. I don't like this configuration personally. I think that you might be better off putting 2 lots there instead of 3 lots, and maybe that makes more sense and that addresses some of those concerns that I have. But that's a decision that you guys have to make.
Unfortunately,
how you
it's
wanna
kind of
go.
like a stalemate, because when we were called by this gentleman's real estate attorney and said, well, we're going to take a look at this and we're going to make an offer, I said, we can't accept an offer. You can't make an offer to us. We do not have township approval for you to make an offer to us. We do not have approval to accept that offer. So this is kind of a catch-22.
Sure.
We can't accept an offer unless we get approval, and you want us to get an offer to get an approval.
Even if it's a contingent, I don't work in real estate. Maybe you can chime in on this.
I think exactly what they're doing is their opportunity to get the most bang for the buck for their development, to help their development. If they sell it as it is, the way it is, you're going to get whatever open space is worth, which is nothing what developable property would be. So what they're looking to do is go back to their residents and say, look, we can get $150,000 and this money will go back into the community, or we can get $30,000, it's what they're willing to offer for open space. I mean, it's not our decision to make. We either approve the development or not approve the development, not to tell them what to do with their property or how to do it. So my suggestion was go back, think about what you heard here, make sure that you guys understand what everybody here was talking about. You come in, you want to do the same thing, that's your right, and then a vote will be taken. It'll be thumbs up or thumbs down, and that's the way it would be. That's my opinion. If anybody else feels different on the board, you're more than welcome to give your opinion.
I would be willing to vote for it this evening, and I'm prepared to vote for it this evening. I think it's a good plan. I think it's a reasonable plan. They have the houses set back off of Bensalem Boulevard, so if they're egress and ingress to the properties,
No, but they're not. This is just lots. We're not talking about houses yet. We're talking about the potential for houses that can go anywhere, subject to whatever is in our zoning ordinances.
No,
as far as setbacks.
if we subdivide it for the 3 lots, the houses are going to be on the 3 lots. 1, 2, 3.
Agreed, but it's setback from Bensalem Boulevard or setback from Byberry Road? I guess I don't understand what you mean by that statement.
Bensalem Boulevard is 300 feet from the first property line on the first lot.
Yeah, there's another house in between. I wouldn't be worried about that.
Exactly.
I'd be worried about the ingress and egress on Byberry Road.
I want to ask you again, you have the opportunity to go back and think about it, come back at our next meeting, and then have the full board here to place do the votes. It's up to you. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
I believe after what we've heard here, we should wait till we get a full council.
Okay.
Okay,
And I'm prepared to put a motion on the floor. So it's up, Mr. President, it's entirely up to you.
Well, if they want to take time to go back and think about what was said, and they want to continue this till the next meeting, I think that we've done that in the past many times. I think we should give them the opportunity. It's just my opinion. So our choices are, you make a motion and we vote on it straight up, or you give them the opportunity to go back and think and maybe talk about what's here and come up with something that's better, or you take a vote, and if it's 2-2, it goes down, and that's all there is to it. So,
Respectfully, we'd like to wait till the next council meeting.
Okay, there you go.
Mr. Paizo, we need to take a motion, make a motion on that to continue it?
I'll do that then.
Yes, at this point, we've convened and have nearly completed the hearing on the subdivision application. At this point, the applicant is asking the council to recess the hearing and to resume it, I assume, at the next council meeting of August 13. So council can make a motion to table the matter to your August 13 meeting to continue the hearing at that time. And I'm just looking, let's see, this was filed back on May 1st, June, July, August. So we should probably also get an extension of time from the applicant under the municipality's planning code for the time in which the township has to consider the application. And the applicant would grant us that as part of their request that the matter be tabled to the August 13 meeting, that they also give us an extension of time under the municipality's planning code, let's say to 30 days, has September, April, June, and November, to August 31st.
Is that agreeable to you?
It is.
I'll put that in form of a motion, Mr. President.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 4-0. So we'll see you August 13th.
August 13th. Thank you.
Have
Thank
a
you very
great
much.
evening.
Appreciate it.
Okay, number 13 on the agenda, any public comment? Do we have anyone in the audience that wants to give public comment? Seeing no one come forward, are you coming up? Okay.
Yes.
Scan them and send them. Let me, if I have time, I'll scan them.
You guys know they withdrew the plan, right? That's off the board.
Yeah,
You got to go
it's-
back and redo it and come back.
Yeah, I'm going to say something else.
Okay.
My name's Francesco Vellucci, Vellucci, 3056 Clark Avenue. And my father-in-law lives next door at 3046. We have another neighbor here too. And we're having a flooding issue right now coming out of the Great Street Road at 4829 Street Road. And the parking lot's coming out, the water basin comes all the way across and it's flooding our properties. Even though the other one at 4851 is getting contingency, we're getting water from all that still. And it's flooding on my property, our basements, our backyards, his property, her driveway tripping up. And I got 5 other people ready to sign and say, yo, we're having a problem, all come in at the same time. I was just trying to figure out what we can do to resolve the problem.
His addresses, but he said 48.
Because I live on the corner of Lang and Clark.
Mr. Mayor, could we have,
I've been having, because I had
could we have
Christine out.
Mr. Gans or and Quinn go out, take a look at the property and what's going on there and see what the options are?
Because
What's the property that's the problem? I have 4829 Street Road?
Yeah, the doctor's office, the water will come out and it'll sit there for at least a day to 3 days of water coming out. I have a photo of it right here, of everything that's coming
You can
out.
bring it forward.
Is it veterinarians or doctors?
Kids, doctors.
Kids, okay, thanks.
Which I'm not opposed
We'll take a look at it.
I just need to figure out the water problem.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to get, we get the engineer, our engineer
Yeah.
out there, look and see what's
Yeah,
going
and-
on and.
My problem is, I'm afraid that we're going to have an issue when you build this other property, put another parking lot, even though you have a basin. Out of all these property, the only one that works is the veterinarian hospital. I don't get no water from that. I went out there in the pouring rain, I watch it, because the gravel on my driveway's going away. There's the other people on rail, they're having a problem. The water's coming in because they built the parking lot and it floods their house out right away. And I've been talking to all the neighbors, everybody's having the same issues. The ground disc can't suck it up. And I just don't know what else to do.
Ron, have we been out there before on this property? Or on-
I
on-
think over the years, we've had problems out there.
And it's just getting worse. It's just, and because I talked to the other neighbor, he, on either side of this 4851 property that you guys are dealing with, both sides, he just put gravel down, and he got approval for that and did everything with the permits. And he's fine. He leveled it out, and he made it a lot better than it was. Because he cleaned out the ground, he took everything, and he made it beautiful. He's awesome. And he got the water to stop a lot of it, but I'm afraid if this goes in and this other doctor's office is coming out, you can see the water, it pours. And then when it does really pour, it comes across, and now I'm starting to get cracks in my foundation. I'm gonna get ready to get it parged and get somebody to fix the wall. But what's gonna stop us? That's what I need to know.
Ron, make sure that we'll go out and get on top of this and see what's going on there.
And we'll bring, We'll bring it back to council so that.
3046, and my finals is, oh, he's 3046, I'm 3056.
And what's the young lady's address, so? 'cause
She's
part-
having,
What is, do you want to come up and give it to us?
oh, you got to see it.
She's, give it, Ron Gans is gonna,
Okay, the address,
Clark Avenue? Sorry. And she's having a problem with it.
3065 Clark Avenue.
and what's the issue with your property?
The same.
Same
the
thing?
flooding, yes, plus the Lana Farman, Farbman.
Could you email us this information? It'd be a lot easier if you could just email us the information.
Yep.
You could email it to Ron.
Ron? Yep. Or it's on the thing, on the website? Okay.
And then this way we can, they'll go out and review and then come back and give council the information of where we are. Because I know we've gone through this with Mr. Powell for a
Well,
long time.
He got his house fixed 30 years ago.
I understand, but
in the 80s,
we
and
have to
then now-
take,
And the original house fell down for the same problem.
we need to take it seriously and look at what's going on. I think that's what Mr. Gans will be able to
Yeah, 'cause I
help
just
with
said
that
I'll
and the
agree.
engineers to see what we have to do. That's why you heard me say that I wanted curbs to take the water to where it should be going, not just being able to run off onto the property and never make it to the basin. Maybe we have to look at that as a whole, and that's things that the engineers will bring to us.
Yeah, because I just went, I know I'm not supposed to be on the doctor's office, but I went through looked through all their things, I put my camera up, and I'm like, there's no basin underground, it's just coming in, and it pours out, but half their hole is clogged, where the water pours out.
Yeah,
It's
'cause
only.
we got to
the-
see what might have underground, if any of them have the underground basins, Ron?
They said there was, but I looked and I didn't see anything.
They're all required to get stormwater.
Okay, well, let's make sure that everybody's adhering to what they were approved to do, and let's see what we have to do to try and work
Yeah, 'cause
forward with this.
Her property, her driveway is Lang Avenue, and they said it's a paper road now, and the whole road's ripping up, and there's a pipe that collapsed underneath there, it looks
When
like.
you email Ron, why don't you email contact information if you guys are around, maybe we
Yes, I'll do
we
it
can meet out
tomorrow,
there
tonight when I get home.
and talk about it, yeah?
Let us know in their comment.
He is.
That's what I just said, if he give you contact information, we
I'm
call and
gonna get all
say.
the information,
Yeah, okay.
All right,
And make sure to put her name and phone number on
I will. I'll do both of our numbers.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
Shame we took that project from the bring them out, you know?
Yeah, well, 'cause I was
I was
talking
just
to
interested in
everybody.
just
I
in-
called last year, and they told me the roads were gonna fix it. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Alan Windsor, 3232 Azalea. I'm very familiar with this area. I live close by, and I've seen the flooding that goes on over here. That's why, on the Environmental Board, we asked for the extra-large basin on that property, because of the conditions that these gentlemen have, and we didn't think that they should get any more water on the property. And there are culverts under there that are clogged and crushed in places that should have been, refixed and.
And they're some of the things Ron's going to look into, because if
Right,
their basins
right.
aren't working right, then they have to fix them.
That was the main reason we asked for the extended, okay, thank you.
Very, very appreciate what you guys do on the environmental board, Alan. All right, so Ron, you're going to check on the other basins, you're going to meet with these people, and we're going to make sure we try and square this away once and for all. Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the public like to come forward? Seeing no one come forward, public comment is closed. Other board business, Mr. Gans?
I guess this is all water here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's water, yeah.
Mr. Pizzo?
Nothing further.
Ms. Gallagher? Okay, Mr. Sloan?
Two things. Mr. Mayor, you said, I guess, 2 meetings ago, you would look into the recycling at municipal parks.
Yes.
Did you, and I know you had to leave early last time, so I forgot to ask it before you
Yeah, I had a
left.
written report from the directors. They're working on it.
Okay,
There's been some, we're doing other municipalities also
okay.
on what they're, some aren't. Some have special treatment they're doing. The problem is when they put it all together or they pick up, it gets mixed up, but we're working on it. I have a written report. I don't have it with me.
Okay,
I'll get it to you.
Can you send it to me?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, Ms. Polari, I know we spoke a couple days ago about the ordinance change for township employees for the residency
Yes,
requirement.
Mr. Paizo is compiling it. He's going to send that to everybody on council. I'd like council to review it, and let's come to a consensus of what one works for all of us, and we'll have that hopefully by, if not next meeting, the second meeting in August, we'll have something to be able to vote on. I want to make sure, I don't want to be fighting back and forth on everything. Let's get something that works
Yeah,
for
I'd like to get
everybody.
something that
Because we have
works.
three different unions, three different things. Let's make something that works.
Is it one potential change that could address all of it?
Well, based on my conversation with Mr. Polari, what I'm in the process of doing is giving you, I guess, two alternatives. One is just to repeal it, and the other would be to take sort of a hybrid of the language that we have in the various collective bargaining agreements with a blank for you guys to insert a number that would say employees are required either to live inside the township or may live outside of the township within a perimeter of X. So it'll give you two different options to consider whether you want to do away with the residency requirement altogether, or if you want to continue to maintain it for those employees who aren't subject to the terms of the various collective bargaining agreements. This might be an alternative to still allow them to live outside of the township, but within a perimeter similar to what the various members of the bargaining units are permitted to do. And in those cases, most of them are grandfathered. The newer hires still have to live within the township, but older ones are allowed to live outside. So we're synthesizing all of that into two alternatives for you to consider.
Okay.
One of my biggest concerns is if we have our road department guys and they live 30 miles away and we get a bad snowstorm, you're
I'm
not
not
going to have
saying
your
30
streets.
miles.
I'm
I'm
just
trying
saying,
to
that's
figure
why,
it, yeah.
that's why we need to come up with something, a consensus that makes it work and it's reasonable that people could get here if we have a storm. That's just my opinion, that I think that we owe that
No,
to
I
the
think that's a
people.
valid point. In that kind of situation, if they want to live whatever distance we may or may not approve, then they've got to understand that they still got to report for duty in storms.
Right, and I just want to make
Yeah.
sure we do this right, and hopefully, once this is done, then all the collective bargaining units going forward will.
Incorporate that and okay, great. Thank you. That's all I had.
Mr. Tagnasian.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple things. Mr. Paizo had brought up previously the traffic light in Humeville and Galloway. Maybe 2 meetings ago, I wasn't sure if there was any progress that was made on that. I was sitting at the light the other day, and I just wanted to...
I can't tell you other than I believe the mayor indicated at an earlier meeting that we had given that information to the township traffic engineer, and so they're on it. That's all I can tell you.
And then there's been a request at Hidden Valley for striping in front of the stop signs. Hidden Valley's got a main thoroughfare there, and it branches off into the different courts. And I don't believe there's any striping there at the stop signs. I don't think it's too much of a request if you wouldn't mind looking into it.
Sure, the mayor's engaged in a conversation, but I'm sure his office will give it, I guess, to Public Works or whatever department oversees that.
Thank you. And then a question about, I saw some information in regards to the developer down there at Waterside. Some financial issues. I wasn't sure if you were aware of anything or if you could shed any light on.
I know that they had been into the township to discuss the sale of the project from the current developer to a national builder. Last I heard, that had not gone through, but that's about as much detail as I have or would be comfortable sharing publicly, so as not to get involved in their private dealings.
But I guess at this point, then, there's no development going on. Phase 2's not starting.
That I don't know, if there's any construction activity going on down at Waterside, Ron? So there is still work going on phase 1. Nothing's come in for phase 2.
Okay, but the current developer that's in there is then going to finish phase 1?
I believe that was always the intention, but...
And how about the public improvements for phase 1?
I believe that may be part of the issue that those two parties are still working through, but at the moment, Township's understanding is that Phase 1 improvements would remain with the current developer.
We have escrows and stuff too, right? Escrows
Yes,
and,
obviously, yes.
for that stuff.
Okay. All right, thank you for that update.
Sure.
And then, last but not least, Mr. President, I'll just provide you with the suggestion on the ordinance change for the boards and organizations. I'll certainly share it. I know Mr. Knowles isn't here, but I'll email that out to as well.
Have Debbie mailed out to office?
That would be great, please, yep. So your consideration would be most appreciated. Certainly take a look at it. Any suggestions, changes, I'd be flexible to listen and to whatever comments you.
Fantastic. Deb, I'm going to get you to email this out to all the board members. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Kisselback?
Nothing, Mr. President.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, so, okay, our next meeting will be on 8/13/18. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?